وما كلا وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق الرسول الأمين سبحان اللهم صل على محمد. ایک اور آگ بزولن صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. سو رہے ہیں سب میرے والی و دل بر ریت پر سو رہے ہیں سب میرے والی و دل بھر ریت پر بانو بیٹھی ہی رہیں گی زندگی بھر ریت پر ہوتی چادر سایہ کرتی ہائے کتنی دھوپ ہے سو رہا ہے آگ کے میں دام اکبر ریت پر پیاس میں بچوں کی کچھ ہو جاتی تھی شدت سی بات پھینکتے تھے جب عدو پانی دکھا کر ریت پر جھولا تیرا جل گیا تو کیا ہوا اے میرے لال لوریاں دوں گی تجھے جا لٹا کر ریت پر باپ کے سینے پہ سر رکھ کر جسے آتی ہو نیند کیسے سوئے شاہ کی وہ ننھی دکھ تر ریت پر شام کے راستے میں سرشبیر کا اس دم رکا گر گئی نا کیسے جب بانوں کی دختر ریت پر دھیان پردے کا بہت تھا ڈال دو اپنی ابا بیٹھی ہے عباس سر ننگے یہ خواہر ریت پر ہوگی آسان مشکلیں اور شبیر بھی جب انیسو گالحد میں تیرا بستر ریت پر سو رہے ہیں سب میرے والی و دل بر ریت پر. صلوات محمد.
صلی اللہ محمد ابن آل محمد وعجل فرجہم. محشر کی صبح آج نمایاں ہے شام میں، کنبہ شفیع حشر کا ہے ازدحام میں. سر ننگے روح فاطمہ ہے اہتمام میں، خاصان ذوالجلال ہیں بلوائے عام میں. جبریل کی خزادیاں تشریف لائی ہیں، مشکل کشا کی بیٹیاں بندی میں آئی ہیں. مشکل کشا کی بیٹیاں بندی میں آئی ہیں بیچ میں کھلے ہوئے آلے ابا کے سر، نیزوں پہ ان کے گرد ہیں فوج خدا کے سر. بچوں کے سر، بزرگوں کے سر، اقربا کے سر، روتے ہیں وارثوں کے سروں کو دکھا کے سر. سر رکھ کے زانوؤں پہ جو وارث کو روتے ہیں، ظالم سروں میں نیزوں کے نوکیں چبھوتے ہیں. ظالم سروں میں نیزوں کے نوکیں چبھوتے ہیں. نیزے پہ ہرملا کے چمکتا ہے ایک ہلال، بکھرے ہوئے ہیں چاند سے منہ پر جھنڈولے بال. اولاد والے کہتے ہیں اے رب ذوالجلال، اس بے زباں کے خون کا کس نے لیا وبال. گردش میں ہائے ہائے یہ کس کا ستارہ ہے، لے کر بلائیں کہتی تھی بانو ہمارا ہے. لے کر بلائیں کہتی تھی بانو ہمارا ہے. پہنچے مراد کو سفر اپنا تمام ہے، اترو اسیرو اترو ادب کا مقام ہے. آگے تو آستانِ سلطان شام ہے، دیکھو تو کیا جلال ہے کیا احتشام ہے. اس کی ولا میں عرش کو ہم نے ہلا دیا، گھر پنجے تن کا خاک میں بالکل ملا دیا. گھر پنجے تن کا خاک میں بالکل ملا دیا. سننا یہ تھا کہ سب کے جگر پر چھری چلی، اونٹوں سے اتری بیبیاں کہہ کے یا علی. آنکھیں پھرا کے رہ گئیں بانوں کی لاڈلی، روح حسین کو ہوئی جنت میں بے کلی. طاقت بدن کی گھٹ گئی اور ذوف بڑھ گیا، اترے جو بے سہارے تو دم سب کا چڑھ گیا. اترے جو بے سہارے تو دم سب کا چڑھ گیا. سینے میں دم ابھی نہ سمائے تھے ہے غضب، جو آئے ریس مار لیے ہاتھوں میں بے ادب. گھبرا کے پوچھا بیویوں نے تجویز کیا ہے اب، بولا عمر کے مجلس حاکم میں ہے طلب. منظور ہے کہ روح علی پھر ملول ہو، مجمع میں رو بکار آل رسول ہو. مجمع میں رو بکار آل رسول ہو. مظلومیت سے رو کے یہ مظلوموں نے کہا، حاکم کی یہ خوشی ہے تو پھر عذر ہم کو کیا، بازار میں تو پھر چکے بے مخنع و ردا، آساں کرے گا مشکل دربار بھی خدا، حاضر ہیں لے چلو ہمیں گمراہ ہو لے چلو، سر پر نہیں حسین جہاں ہو، سر پر نہیں حسین جہاں چاہے لے چلو، کچھ اب بھی اوڑھنے کے لیے دو گے یا نہیں، حاکم کا سامنا ہو سروں پر ردا نہیں، لائے ہو اپنے شہر میں یہ بھی حیا نہیں، کیسے عرب ہو تم کو حمیت ذرا نہیں، سیدانیوں کی کچھ تو مدارت چاہیے، چادر بجائے ہدیے و سوغات چاہیے، چادر بجائے ہدیے و سوغات چاہیے، پر اتنا ٹھہرو وارثوں کے سر سے پوچھ لیں، شاہ امم کے فرق منور سے پوچھ لیں، دربار جانے کو علی اکبر سے پوچھ لیں، عباس ابن حیدر صفدر سے پوچھ لیں، مردہ نہ سمجھو زندہ یہ حیدر کے پیارے ہیں، مختار ہم نہیں ہیں یہ مالک ہمارے ہیں، مختار ہم نہیں ہیں یہ مالک ہمارے ہیں، نیزوں پہ نصب تھے جو شہیدوں کے سر تمام، زینب نے بڑھ کے بھائی کے سر کو کیا سلام، چلائی کیوں ذبیح خدا شاہ تشنہ کام، مرضی ہے کیا حضور کی کہتے ہیں کیا امام، دربار مٹ گیا تیرا خون رن میں بہ گیا، میرے لیے یزید کا دربار رہ گیا، میرے لیے یزید کا دربار رہ گیا، نام حسین لے کے جو بچے دہلتے ہیں، سجاد سر جھکائے ہوئے ہاتھ ملتے ہیں، بولو حسین بولو کہ اب دم نکلتے ہیں، آئی ندا کہ تم بھی چلو ہم بھی چلتے ہیں، آئی ندا کہ تم بھی چلو ہم بھی چلتے ہیں، اس دم جو سر کھلے ہوئے دربار جاؤ گی، امت کی بخشوانے کو محشر میں آؤ گی، اس دم جو سر کھلے ہوئے دربار جاؤ گی، امت کے بخشوانے کو محشر میں آؤ گی، امت کے بخشوانے کو محشر میں آؤ گی، صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجہ.
Before we begin, please recite Surah Fatiha for Muhammad Akram Khan, Shamim Akram, Muhammad Aslam, Sheikh Liqat Ali, Sheikh Shaukat Ali, and Mumtaz Fatima Sheikh. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصينا ما هو العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بهد الهمم ولا يناله غوث الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نات موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر رياح برحمته ووتد بالسخر ميدان أرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم من يوم أول ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, for these next 4 nights, we'll be looking at Karbala, but we won't be looking at Karbala from whatever aspect we've all been understanding and looking at Karbala through, but I want to look at Karbala through the lens of Jihad al-Akbar. Jihad al-Akbar is different from Jihad al-Asghar. Whenever we think about Karbala, we think about the battle that took place out there. That battle that took place out there was Jihad al-Asghar. The battle that took place within each and every one of those individuals while they were doing that Jihad al-Asghar is known as Jihad al-Akbar. It's because of that Jihad al-Akbar that each and every single one of those individuals did, from Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, all the way to Ali al-Asghar alayhi salam, all the way to Lady Zainab until they returned back to Medina. It is that Jihad al-Akbar that has kept alive Karbala until today. And it is that Jihad al-Akbar that will continue to keep Karbala alive until the end of time. So it makes you wonder, what is this Jihad al-Akbar? What is our responsibility in regards to the Imam of our time? When you look at Karbala, when you look at the history, you see that 20,000 Kufins, they wrote letters to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Narrations, they say 20,000 people, they wrote letters to Imam Hussein alayhi salam telling him to come to Kufa. All of them, they were all saying what? Labbaik ya Hussein. Today, 200 million Shias, what did they say? They say the same thing to the Imam of their time. Labbaik ya Imam. Labbaik ya Imam Zaman. We are all calling for Imam Zaman. Yes, we say Labbaik ya Hussein. Because, why do we say Labbaik ya Hussein? Because that Hal min Nas, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam said 1400 years ago, that Hal min Nas, is there any helper to help me, was not confined to 1400 years ago, was not confined to that time, was not confined to that place. But that Hal min Nas, it carried over time until the end of time. What was it that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was asking help for? Was it that external battle? No, it wasn't that external battle. Why? Because the night before, Imam Hussein alayhi salam had already told everyone that tomorrow our objective is shahadat. Shahadat. That was the objective of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that we are all going to be shaheed tomorrow. That was it. But look at each and every single one of those companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Look at each and every. Look at how much taqwa they had. Look at that Jihad al-Akbar that they had done up until this point, which allowed them, until the end of time, all of them to be known as alayhi salam. Whenever they take the names of one of the shuhada, what did they say? Alayhi salam. It doesn't matter if it was one of the shuhada that came the last moments of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's life. It doesn't matter. If it was an individual like Hur who came the last moments of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's life, alayhi salam. Or it doesn't matter if this individual came from Medina, alayhi salam. Why? It was because of that Jihad al-Akbar that they had all done. Look at the difference. There is a reason Imam Hussein alayhi salam had said that neither my grandfather, nor my father, nor my brother have companions like I do. Why? If you look at the narrations, each and every single one of those companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, all of them, when they wanted to go to the battlefield, do you know what they would say? They would say, Ya Abu Abdullah, do you give us permission to go sacrifice our life for you? Do you give us permission to go sacrifice our life for you? Think about this. They don't say, do you give us permission to go sacrifice our life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. All of them, they say, do you give us permission to sacrifice our life for you? Why? Because he is the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. When you sacrifice your life for the representative, you're sacrificing your life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are you going to know if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted your sacrifice? When his representative says, yes, he accepts your sacrifice. He accepts it. Look at that ma'rifah that they all had. How did they achieve that ma'rifah? It was the Jihad al-Akbar. Inshallah, the next 4 nights, this is what we're going to talk about. Jihad al-Akbar, what is our duty? How do we do Jihad al-Akbar? Because Jihad al-Akbar 1400 years ago was different. Jihad al-Akbar today is different. Jihad al-Akbar 1400 years ago was much easier. Jihad al-Akbar today is a bit more difficult. Jihad al-Akbar out in the countryside is different and a bit easier. Jihad al-Akbar here in the city is more difficult. Jihad al-Akbar in an Islamic country is easier. Jihad al-Akbar in a non-Islamic country is more difficult. It's more difficult. You look at narrations where the Holy Prophet, he says, the end of times. The mu'mineen that exist in the end of times, they'll be the best of mu'mineen. Mu'mineen, he used the word mu'mineen. All of us, we think that we are mu'mineen. But inshallah, some other time we'll go into detail about who a mu'min is, what are the signs of a mu'min. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that a mu'min has 30 signs. Imam Hassan al-Basri says that a mu'min, he has 11 signs. A mu'min has about 30 rights on another mu'min. You look at these narrations and then you ask yourself, are we truly a mu'min or do we just call ourselves a mu'min? You won't be a mu'min unless, who? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, yes, you're a mu'min. So when we look at Karbala, let's not look at Karbala just as the battle. Karbala, if you were to look at Karbala from an esoteric point of view, Karbala is that battle that takes place within every individual every single day. Karbala is that battle out here in the open. Inside every individual, there's always a battle taking place between doing what's good and doing what's evil. Every day, that battle is always taking place. Karbala was that battle that within the individual come out here. You see that. On one side, who did you have? Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam, who personified nothing but goodness. On the other side, you had Yazid and his army, who personified nothing but wickedness. Within this individual too, there's those two battles that happen between Nafs al-Nawama and Nafs al-Ammara. Nafs al-Ammara is that nafs that tells an individual to constantly do something that is bad. And you see this word used in the Quran also when Nabiullah Yusuf alayhi salam, when he says, it's this nafs al-Ammara that is going to tell me to do bad. Nafs al-Nawama is that nafs that tells you, no, if you do this, then this is the consequence of you doing that. This is what will happen if you do this. So you see that every day there's these two nufus that are fighting within this individual. Nafs al-Ammara is that nafs that tells you to do something evil. Nafs al-Lawama is that nafs that tells you to do good. That's what you had in Karbala. On one side you had Nafs al-Ammara, meaning Yazid and his army. On the other side you had Nafs al-Lawama, meaning Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. That battle that takes place within this individual, it was taking place out there. What was the reason for Imam Hussein alayhi salam's revolution? Was it just so we can do matam? Was it just so we can cry? No. What was his mission? Why did he stand up? Why did he fight against Yazid? What was missing within Islam? What was that? It was the soul of Islam that was missing. It was the soul of Islam that was. Were they not praying? They were praying. Were they not fasting? They were fasting. Were they not doing Hajj? They were doing Hajj. They were doing all of this. When they were doing all of this, then when Imam Hussein rises and he says that I'm not rising for fame, I'm not rising for power, I'm not rising for political gain, I'm rising why? To correct my grandfather's ummah. What was wrong? What kind of a Muslim would you be? You pray 5 times a day. yet you have Yazid as your Amir. You go to Hajj every year, you've chosen Yazid as your Amir. You fast every Ramadan, you have Yazid as your Amir. You say that you follow the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but your leader, you've chosen a leader who breaks every single law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what was missing? It wasn't the prayers that was missing. It wasn't the Hajj that was missing. It was the soul of Islam that was missing. That soul of Islam, what was that soul of Islam? That soul of Islam, the Muslims left that soul of Islam when they took the first Khalifa and left Amir al-Mu'mineen. That soul of Islam was Amir al-Mu'mineen. That soul of Islam was Imam Hassan. That soul of Islam was Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That soul of Islam is the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. What did the people do? They left the soul. They left the soul. And because they left the soul, they left that nafsul lawama. And they followed that nafsul ammara. And you see up until today, look at Islam today. The rest of the world, it looks at Islam today. Does it look at Islam as something, a religion that's very great? Or does it look at Islam as, no, this religion, it's always been like this. As in, it's always done killings. It's always done all of this. No. When you look at the Islam that the Holy Prophet brought, not one killing. When he was converting people, not one killing. Yet after he passes away, when the Khalifas start becoming Muslims, or when the Khalifas start taking over and they have power, what is there? Killing. Forcing people to convert, forceful conversions. This wasn't Islam. This was what? Pre-Islamic Arabia. Pre-Islamic Arabia. This is what they would do. That's what was missing, that soul of Islam. And that soul of Islam was missing. Why? Because that jihad al-akbar was not being done by the individuals anymore. That jihad al-akbar. Prayers was being done. But how was it being done? Like the way a lot of people today pray. They just go up and down. Because it's wajib, they go up and down and they think they have prayed. They think that they've prayed. In the Holy Prophet's time, in Medina, there was a youngster who was praying and the Holy Prophet was watching him pray. And he was praying very fast, like the way a lot of youngsters do. When they don't have a lot of time, when we don't have a lot of time, or, if there's a sports match that's on, if there's a movie that we want to watch that's on, or if we need to go hang out with friends, what do? We pray as quickly as we can. The youngster, he was praying next to the Holy Prophet just that same way. The Holy Prophet looks at him and he tells everyone else that if this youngster dies praying like this, he hasn't died on my religion. He hasn't died on my religion. Understand how important prayers is for Islam. That jihad al-akbar that I spoke about. Look at every single one of those individuals that sacrificed their life for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Look at them. Forget their beliefs. Maybe all of you think that all of them, they believed in Imam Hussein alayhi salam to be the rightful Imam from the beginning. No, they didn't. You have examples such as Uhud, who came to Imam Hussein's side when? 10th of Ashur. Even before Hur, you have examples such as Zuhair ibn Qayn. Zuhair ibn Qayn, if you look at his history, they say that he was a supporter of Usman. He supported Usman over Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet he is one of the Shuhada of Karbala. He's one of the Shuhada of Karbala. So what do you understand? That when that nafs, when that ruh finally comes back, it guides you back to the straight path again. When it comes back, it guides you back to that straight path again. That is the job of nafs al-lawama. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Zuhair ibn Qayn, where did he meet Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Imam was going towards Karbala from Medina. He met him on the way to Karbala. And he told Zuhair, isn't it time that you leave now? Isn't it time that you come with me now? Isn't it time that you come with me now? And Zuhair, what does he do? He realizes at that time, he should have supported Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam father. He realizes at that time, he should have supported Amir al-Mu'mineen, or else he was a staunch advocate of the third Khalifa. But when Imam Hussein calls him, he heeds the call. Why? That Jihad al-Akbar. Look at all of them. I brought up prayer. Why? Because in this day and age, especially with the youngsters, this is something that is very difficult for them to do. Why? One, a lot of them, they don't know why they pray. If you were to ask them, they'd say, it's in our religion. They'd say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to pray. That's the answer. But that's not the answer Amir al-Mu'mineen gives. That's not the answer Imam Hussein alayhi salam gives of doing ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not the answer Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, that's not the answer Imam Baqir alayhi salam give when they say you should do ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's ordered you to do it. No. They say, look, when it comes to abideen, there are three types. There's some people that do ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of greed. For what? Jannah. There's some people that do ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because they're afraid of His punishment. And there's some people that do ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because they truly believe that it is becoming of Him to do His ibadat. They truly believe that it is becoming of Him to do His ibadat. When this is the answer that the Imams gave, that means what? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do, so we do it, that answer does not suffice. But in order to get to this answer, that they truly believe that He is becoming of ibadat, that means what? You have to understand the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about when He says He's created the jinn and the ins illa li ya'budun. I have not created the jinn or the ins except that they worship me. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, when he does the tafsir of this verse, he says, liya'budun bima'na liya'rifun. Liya'budun means liya'rifun. Meaning what? I have not created the jinn or the ins except that they have my ma'rifah. How can you do ibadat of a Lord when you don't even know the Lord? You have to first know, you have to first understand the Lord. Then you can do His ibadat. When you finally understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then when it comes to the ibadat, you'll have so much love for the ibadat. Then there will be no lacks when you do the ibadat. But what's happened? When it comes to Tawheed, we're not strong when it comes to Tawheed. When we're not strong when it comes to Tawheed, understanding Tawheed, that means that everything else is lacking. Everything, adal, nabuwat, imamat, qayamat, and then all of the faruddin, they all revolve around what? Tawheed. Without Tawheed, everything else is nothing. It's useless. So if you don't understand Tawheed, then you won't understand anything, any of the other usul ad-din. When you don't understand any of the other usul ad-din, then the faruddin you won't care about. You won't care about. And this is the problem. It's in the usul ad-din. When you begin to understand Tawheed, then you'll begin to understand Adal. You begin to understand Nabuwat. You'll begin to understand Imamat. You'll begin to understand Qayamat. Once you begin to understand all of that, then the Faruddin would be easier for you to do. You wouldn't have a problem with the Faruddin. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Baqir, he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Imam, he says that Bunyal Islam ala khamsin. The pillars of Islam are 5. Bunyal Islam ala khamsin. The pillars of Islam, they're 5. The foundations of Islam, they're 5. He goes, Salat, Saum, Hajj, Zakat, and Wilaya. These are the 5, Imam Baqir, these are the 5 pillars, these are the 5 foundations of Islam. Namaz was being done. Hajj was being done. Zakat was being given. Siyam was being done. What was it that was left? This wilayah that was left. That's exactly what Imam Baqir Islam said. He said that the Muslims, they held on to the first four and they let go of the one that was the most important, which was the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. They let go of the soul of Islam. They let go of the core of Islam. And if you read, for example, books of ulama that have become Shia, especially Sayyid Tejani, his very first book about how he became Shia, Then I Was Guided. When he gets to Iraq, he goes to the grave of Abdul Qadir Jilani, who was a Sufi saint for the Sunnis, and he's buried in Baghdad. He goes there, he does the ziyarat, he's with a Shia friend. And then where did they go from there? They go to Qazvin. When they go to Qazvin, the Shia friend, he says that I went to go do ziyarat. And Tejani, he asked me, who's buried here? And I tell him, you don't know who's buried here? He goes, no. You hold on to Abdul Qadir Jilani, and you don't know Musa Kazim, who's the seventh great grandson of the Holy Prophet? He himself, he says, look, you've held on to Abdul Qadir Jilani. What did he say? You've held on to the peel. You've held on to the peel and you've let go of the fruit. Abdul Qadir, he said, Abdul Qadir is just a peel. Imam Musa Kazim, he is the actual fruit of Islam. He was the fruit. You've let go of the fruit. He goes, when he said that to me, then I wanted to know who this Musa Kazim was. That wilayah was missing. That is what Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam stood up for. To bring about that revolution within this microcosm. When this revolution occurs within this microcosm, then the revolutions occur in this macrocosm. You see that exactly after the shahadat of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Battle of Ain al-Warda. That happened after the shahadat, before Mukhtar's uprising. There was a battle that took place. There were little uprisings that took place before the uprising of Mukhtar. But Battle of Ain al-Warda, one of the bigger ones, 4,000 Kufans, they rose up against how many? 20,000 Syrians. Why? Because they believed that Imam Hussein was rightful Imam? No. They felt ashamed for what they did by not helping Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They rose up. 4,000 Kufans, they rose up. Most of them, they got killed. Not shaheed, they got killed. There's a difference between shahadat and just dying. Shahadat is when the Imam of the time tells you to sacrifice your life, then you're a shaheed. But if you rise up without the permission of the Imam of your time, you're not a shaheed, you're just dead. So those Kufans, they lost the opportunity of shahadat. What did they do? They just threw away their life. Ask an alim. If they were to go with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, few years earlier, shahadat. No. 20,000 Syrians, they came, they slaughtered them. The people, some of the people that were left from Battle of Ain al-Warda, they ended up going to Mukhtar. And yes, I know about the disagreements between Mukhtar, whether Mukhtar was rightful in what he did and what he did. No, the ulama, they say that yes, he was rightful. The fact that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, when some of the heads of the generals of Yazid's army were being brought, what does Imam Zain al-Abidin say? He says, when is Mukhtar going to send me the head of Hurmula? When is he going to send me the head of Hurmula? If Imam Zain al-Abidin was not happy with Mukhtar's uprising, he wouldn't have asked, when is he going to send me the head of Hurmula? He would have just sent them back saying, I don't want this. No, the fact that he says, when is he going to send me the head of Hurmula, tells you what? That Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was perfectly fine with Mukhtar's uprising. But you see that uprising started to happen after the shahadat of Imam Hussein al-Islam. That jihad within the nafs started occurring right after the shahadat of Imam Hussein al-Islam. Inshallah, we'll talk about the jihad al-akbar of Lady Zainab. We'll talk about the jihad al-akbar of Imam Sayyid al-Sajjad. Because their jihad that they did, understand that this jihad of Imam Hussein al-Islam, like I said, is jihad al-asghar. The jihad of Lady Zainab is jihad al-akbar. The jihad of Imam Sayyid al-Sajjad is jihad al-akbar. That jihad, those two jihad are what keeps alive Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Those jihad of these individuals, it keeps alive the jihad of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself, the jihad that he did, jihad al-nafs, the companions, the jihad al-nafs that they did, prayer. Today we'll focus on that aspect of jihad, jihad al-akbar, prayer. Because in this age, in this time, because so many things happen around us, it's easy for us to miss our prayers. It's easy for us to make them late. It's easy for us to completely forget. But when it comes to prayer, look at what our ulama of akhlaq, for example, Ali Qazi Tabatabai, who was known as an arif of his time. People like Ayatollah Bahjat, they were his students. People like Imam Khomeini, they were his students in Irfan. In Irfan. What does he say? He's buried in Najaf. He was one of those individuals who had a very high status. Even when it came to his students, they talked about karamat that he was able to do. But he himself, he used to say, if you pray on time, if an individual prays on time, and they pray their Salatul Layl, and if they don't achieve a high status in life, then they can spit me in my face. If an individual prays on time and they pray their Salatul Layl, and they don't achieve a high status in this world, then they can spit me in my face. And Arif, when it comes to Irfan, he is known as the teacher of Urafa. He's the one saying this when it comes to Salat. When it comes to Salat, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen say? When it comes to Salat, what does the Quran say? The Quran, it tells us why we should keep up prayers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Asta'inu bis sabri wa salat. Yes or no? Yes. Seek nearness or seek help through patience and prayer. Patience and prayer. What is this patience? What is this prayer? There's this Zahiri interpretation. Patience is being patient about what comes your way. Prayer is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's so many times we pray, it doesn't happen. So often we're patient. How much are we going to be patient? This is why Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, when it comes to patience and prayer, patience is Muhammad, prayer is Wilayat Ali. Meaning what? Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help through Muhammad and the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help through what? The Holy Prophet and the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And that verse, it goes on to say that not both of them, but prayer, it is difficult for a lot of people. Prayer is difficult. Patience is not difficult. Patience and prayer are not difficult, but it's prayer that is difficult for a lot of people. If you look at the Zahiri meaning, prayer is difficult for a lot of people. But if we look at the Batini meaning, even if the Batini meaning we take what Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says is the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, yes, the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen is difficult for a lot of people also. Because if it wasn't, then everyone would have accepted the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Seek nearness through patience and prayer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, in regards to prayer, why has prayer been wajib? Because it keeps you away from fahsha. It keeps you away from all of these indecent acts. Quran says that, yes or no? It keeps you away from indecent acts. How many people pray, but then when they're done with their prayer, they commit indecent acts? Indecent acts means sins. Sins. So many of us, we pray, but we still commit indecent acts. We still commit sins. Either we didn't pray, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is wrong about what He said, na'uzubillah, that prayer keeps us away from fahsha wal munkar. Or prayer here is the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin. What do I mean? It's the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. If an individual truly has the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, It's that wilayah that will keep an individual away from indecent acts. Why? The Imam himself, Imam Zaman al-Islam, himself, he says that every Thursday when the amal of the mu'mineen are brought to me, there's some amal when I see them I start to cry. And these aren't tears of joy. No. These are tears of sadness. Why? Because the amal the mu'min has done, the indecent acts, the sins this mu'min has committed from Thursday to Thursday. It's because Imam Zaman, he sees these acts, he cries himself. How would you feel if tomorrow you find out that it was your acts that made Imam of the time cry? How would you feel if it was your acts that made the Imam of the time cry? It goes for everyone. First and foremost, it goes to anyone that sits on this minbar, and then it goes to everyone else. How would you feel? This is why it's becoming that we start, this soul that we have, this nafs al-ammara that we have, it's necessary that we start to suppress it. This nafs al-lawama that we have, it's necessary that we start to bring it out more. Imam Baqir al-Islam, this is what he says. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. When an individual, he commits a sin, a dark spot appears on their heart. A dark spot appears on their heart. If they don't ask for forgiveness and they continue to sin, the dark spot, it grows. But if they do ask for forgiveness and their forgiveness is accepted, that dark spot, it disappears. It disappears. Yazid became Yazid. Why? Because his heart has been blackened, darkened. His heart was darkened. You look at all of these individuals. You look at Namrud. He became Namrud. How? His heart was darkened. You look at Pharaoh. Pharaoh became Pharaoh. How? Because his heart was darkened. No tawbah. No asking for forgiveness. Yes, at the end, when Pharaoh does ask, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-an, and he tells Jibril to stop him from finishing. Why? Some of you might ask, where's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He's supposed to be merciful. No, he is merciful. But he was not going to recite the kalima because he truly believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was going to recite the kalima. Why? Because the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming to him now. That was it, just to try and be safe from the punishment. And this was a case that was brought in front of the 11th Imam. There was a person who had killed someone. He killed a Muslim. And they brought him in front of the Khalifa. When they brought him in front of the Khalifa, he goes, I became Muslim. When the Khalifa hears this, what is the ruling in Islam? That once you become Muslim, all your past sins are forgiven. Whatever your deeds were beforehand, they were forgiven. So the Khalifa of the time, he didn't know what to do. So what did they do? Even though Imam Hassan Askari was in jail, they bring him out of jail. And they ask him, Ibn Rasulullah, this man, he killed a Muslim. Now he's saying that he's become Muslim. What should we do? He goes, no, kill him. Kill him. Imam, he says, kill him. He goes, why? The only reason he's saying he's recited the shahada, the kalima, is because he wants to be safe from the punishment. That's it. Not because he truly believes in the kalima. The same thing with Fir'aun. The only reason that he was reciting the shahada and kalima was why? Not because he believed in the shahada or kalima of Nabila Musa and Hazrat Harun. No, it was only because he wanted to be safe from the punishment. That was it. So you see, when you've refined your soul, that's when you will be those 72 that were in Karbala. That's when you will be those 72. Imam Zaman al-Islam, the 313 that he's waiting for, those 313, please understand this. Do not think that those 313 are all ulama that wear turbans. Do not think that those 313 are all ulama that went and studied in Najaf or Qum or Mashhad or one of these. No. Do not think that, because they're not. Those 313 could be amongst us. But it's our duty to refine our souls so that we can become those 313. If not those 313, then at the very least, the first 10,000 that pledge allegiance on Imam Zaman's hands. The only way to do that is to refine the soul. And you look at Karbala, you learn this message from Karbala about refining the soul. You learn this message. These 2 months, 10 days, these 2 months, 11 days that we do Majlis, if we don't learn what Imam Hussein alayhi salam stood up for, knowledge, this is where I'm going to, knowledge. They asked Amir al-Mu'minin, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, what's ilm? What's knowledge? He goes, knowledge is information that is acted upon. Knowledge is information that is acted upon. Meaning what? Meaning if you just keep that information to yourself but don't act on it, it's not considered to be knowledge. You have that information. For example, a doctor knows that, for example, smoking is not good. Yet they themselves smoke. He has the information, but Amir al-Mu'minin will say that this person does not have ilm. Why? Because he's not acting on that information. Act on that information. That's when you have knowledge. When you get information about the Shuhada of Karbala and you find out about what their life was like, try to be like them. Follow their footsteps. If an alim was to say, follow the footsteps of Imam Ali alayhi salam, everyone says he's masoom. Lady Zahra, she's masooma. Imam Hussein, he's masoom. That's fine. Look at the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. They weren't masoom. Those are the perfect examples that you should take. Forget people that you see on TV. Look at them, take them for your examples. And if you want to look at them, look at each and every single one of them. Night of Ashur, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he's called all of them and he's told them, do you all want to see your place in heaven? All of them, they say yes. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he shows every one of the companions their place in heaven. He comes to Mullah Abbas and he says, Ya Abbas, do you not want to see your place in heaven? Mullah Abbas, because of the way he was raised, he replies, Mullah, my heaven is wherever you're at. If you're up there, my heaven is up there. If you're down here, my heaven is down here. My heaven is wherever you are at. This is how Mullah Abbas was raised. You look at Mullah Abbas's last few moments of his life. From the time that he was born until the time that he left this world, the first individual that he looked at when he came to this world was Mullah Hussein alayhi salam. The last individual that he wanted to look at before he left this world was Mullah Hussein alayhi salam. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulallah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'minin. Sallallahu alayki ya Siddiqatu Fatima. Sallallahu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Gharib al-Ghuraba. Ya Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Brothers and sisters, Abul Fazl Abbas alayhi salam, Mullah Amir al-Mu'minin, he's leaving this world and he's called all of his sons and one by one he's given every single child into the hands of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. But he's just left one of his sons standing by the door. And Mullah Abbas, he runs into his mother's room and he says, oh mother dear, have I done something wrong? That's when the mother of Mulbanin, she says, Abbas, what do you mean? And that's when he cries and he says, oh mother dear, Amir al-Mu'minin, he took all of the kids and he one by one he gave them in the hands of Hassan, but he left me and he never called me. me. That's when al-Baleen, she comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen and she puts her hands together and she says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, have I done anything to upset you while we were married? And Amir al-Mu'mineen said, no, you have not. Has my son Abbas done anything to upset you? That's when he replies, Ya al-Baleen, neither have you done anything to upset me. Why do you say this? Why? Because my son Abbas, he's crying in his room. He's saying that you called all of the children and one by one you gave him into the hands of Hassan, but you left him standing there. That's when Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Ya al-Baleen, go call my son Abbas. Ya al-Baleen, I married you specifically for Abbas. When Abbas comes, he looks at Mawla Abbas and he says, Ya Abbas, I married your mother specifically for you. Ya Abbas, you're not to go to my son Hassan, you're to go to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam. Why? Because there's going to come a point in time when he will be in the land of Karbala, and I want you to sacrifice yourself on my behalf. That's why some of the ulama brothers, they say that all of the individuals of Ahl Kisad, they were there in Karbala. You look at the Holy Prophet, he was there in the form of Ali al-Akbar. You look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was there in the form of Mawla Abbas. You look at Lady Zahra, she was there in the form of Lady Zainab. You look at Mawla Hassan, he was there in the form of Hazrat Qasim. And you look at Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, he was there himself. Mawla Abbas is the 10th of Muharram. Now Imam Hussein, he hasn't given permission for Mawla Abbas to go to battle. When Mawla Abbas has not gotten that permission, he sees that Sakina, she's coming towards him and she's crying out, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. When he hears this, he picks up Sakina and he says to her, oh my daughter Sakina, I will go get you water, but go ask your father for permission. When Mawla Hussein, he hears this, he says to Abbas, Ya Abbas, if you want to go get water for them, please, you're more than welcome to go get water, but do not take your sword with you, take the spear with you. When he goes, that's when Mawla Hussein, he starts to cry. Why? Because Mawla Abbas is not going to come back with water. When he gets to Farad, Mawla Abbas, he puts some water in the mush. When he was trying to go back, an enemy, he severs his right arm. Then another enemy, he severs his left arm. That's when Mawla Abbas, when he falls to the ground on his knees, an enemy, he strikes an arrow in his eye. When he strikes an arrow in his eye, Mawla Abbas, he tries to take that arrow out. Why? With his knees. Why? Because he had no arms to take out that arrow. An enemy, he comes and he strikes Mawla Abbas in the back of the head. That's when he calls out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. When he calls out his last salam, that's when Mawla Hussein, he rushes towards Mawla Abbas. When he rushes towards Mawla Abbas, he says, who are you? Can you tell me? I'll just wait one moment. Why? Because my master Hussein is going to come. Mawla Hussein, he says, oh my brother Abbas, it's me, I'm here. Mawla Abbas, he says, Ya Abu Abdullah, I have two wasiyas for you. One, Mawla, when I was born, my mother told me that the first face that I saw was yours. Mawla, I don't have my arms. Can you do me a favor? Can you wipe out the blood from my right eye so that I may be able to see you before I leave this world? When Mawla Hussein wipes the blood off, that's when he tells Mawla Hussein, Ya Mawla, I do not want you to take my body back. Why? Because I had promised Sakina would bring her water, but I was not able to.
Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wal la'natullah ala qawmil kafirin. Matam Hussein.
Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Hayya ala khair al-amal, hayya ala khair al-amal, hayya ala khair al-amal. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. शबीर को सर देकर इस्लाम बचाना है, शबीर को सर देकर इस्लाम बचाना है, शबीर کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. کونین ہے قدموں میں ریتی پہ ٹکانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. او شبیر کے ہاتھوں کا وہ ساتھ کوئی لے لے. شبیر کے ہاتھوں کا وہ ساتھ کوئی لے لے. میں وہیں سے مجاہد کو میدان میں لانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. احمد کا نواسا ہے مہراج بھی پائے گا. احمد کا نواسا ہے مہراج بھی پائے گا. نیزے کی بلندی سے قرآن سنانا ہے. شبیر سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے جزاک اللہ اسلام بچانا ہے. کوثر کی مالک ہے پانی کی طلب کیسی. کوثر کی مالک ہے پانی کی طلب کیسی. سوئی ہوئی مقتل کی غیرت کو جگانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. شبیر کو دے کر اسلام بچانا. لفظوں سے حکومت کی بنیاد ہے لانا ہے. لفظوں کے سے حکومت کی بنیاد ہے لانا ہے. سجاد کو ظالم کے درباری دانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا. عباس کا پرچم ہے اور مشک سکینہ ہے. عباس کا پرچم ہے اور مشک سکینہ ہے. آج تلک زندہ سرور کا گھرانہ ہے. جب شبیر کو سر دے کر اسلام بچانا ہے. یا حسین یا حسین ہائے ہائے علی اکبر. ہائے ہائے علی اکبر. ہائے ہائے علی اکبر. ہائے ہائے علی اکبر. او کہتی تھی یہ ماں خوں بھری مئی یس لپٹ کر. ہے علی اکبر. ہے علی اکبر. ہے علی اکبر. اور 18 برس پال کے پروان چڑھایا. 18 برس پال کے پروان چڑھایا. اور وہ گیسوں والا ہے میرا خون میں نہایا، کیسا تھا مقدر، ہائے علی اکبر، ہائے علی اکبر، اور کہتی تھی یہ ماں خون بھری ماں یا سے لپٹ کر، ہائے علی اکبر، ہائے علی اکبر۔ او پہلے تو ایک آواز پہ اٹھ جاتے تھے بیٹا، پہلے تو آواز پہ اٹھ جاتے تھے بیٹا، اور اب اتنی صداؤں پہ بھی پہلو نہیں بدلا، کیا ہو گیا دل بر، ہے علی اکبر، ہے علی اکبر، کہتی تھی یہ ماں کو بھری ماں یا سے لپٹ کر، ہے علی اکبر، ہے علی اکبر، اور آئے جو ہمیں لوٹنے خیمے میں ستم گر، آئے جو ہمیں لوٹنے خیمے میں ستم گر، اور اس وقت صدا دے گی یہ ماں در علی اکبر، اور چھن جائے گی چادر، ہے علی اکبر، ہے علی اکبر، اور کہتی تھی یہ ماں خون بھری میں سے لپٹ کر، ہے علی اکبر، ہے علی اکبر، اور جب کوئی جوان لاش نظر آتی ہے محشر، جب کوئی جوان لاش نظر آتی ہے محشر، ایک یاد سو ہے کرب و بلا جاتی ہے محشر، او دل کہتا ہے رو کر، ہے علی اکبر، ہے علی اکبر، اور کہتی تھی یہ ماں خون بھری میں یا سے لپٹ کر، ہے علی اکبر، ہے علی اکبر، یا حسین 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 یا حسین، اللہم صلی
زیارت وارث سنت قربت اللہ۔ السلام علیک یا وارث آدم صفوت اللہ، السلام علیک یا وارث نوح نبی اللہ، السلام علیک یا وارث ابراہیم خلیل اللہ، السلام علیک یا وارث موسیٰ کلیم اللہ، السلام علیک یا وارث عیسیٰ روح اللہ، السلام علیک یا وارث محمد حبیب اللہ، السلام علیک یا وارث امیر المؤمنین علیہ السلام ولی اللہ، السلام علیک یا ابن محمد المصطفیٰ، السلام علیک یا ابن علی المرتضیٰ، السلام علیک یا ابن فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا ابن خدیجۃ الکبریٰ، السلام علیک یا سار اللہ وابن سارہ والوتر الموتور، اشہد انک قد اقمت الصلاۃ وآتیت الزکاۃ وامرت بالمعروف ونہیت عن المنکر وطاعت اللہ ورسولہ واتاک الیقین، فلعن اللہ امة قتلتک ولعن اللہ امة ظلمتک ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرزية به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الإسلام الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدرحمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الحادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياؤه ورسوله أني بكم مؤمنون وبيا بكم موقنون بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وعمري لأمركم متبعون. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. ذات علی اکبر علیہ السلام سن کر السلام علیک یا ابن رسول اللہ. السلام علیک یا ابن نبی اللہ. السلام علیک یا ابن امیر المومنین. السلام علیک یا ابن الحسین الشہید. السلام علیک یا ایہا الشہید وابن الشہید. السلام علیک یا ایہا المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن اللہ امة قتلتك ولعن اللہ امة ظلمتك ولعن اللہ امة سمعت بذلك فرزیت به. ذات تمام شہداء کربلا سنت کربلا. السلام علیکم یا اولیاء اللہ وأحباءہ. السلام علیکم یا اصفیاء اللہ وعبداءہ. السلام علیکم یا انصار دین اللہ. السلام علیکم یا انصار رسول اللہ. السلام علیکم یا انصار امیر المومنین. السلام علیکم یا انصار فاطمۃ سیدۃ النساء العالمین. السلام علیکم یا انصار ابی محمد الحسن ابن علی الولی الزکی الناصح. السلام علیکم یا انصار ابی عبداللہ بأبی انتم وأمی طبتم وطابت العرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام علیکم یا مولاي ابو الفضل العباس ابن امیر المومنین. السلام علیکم یا عبد الشہید. السلام علیکم یا عبد الصالح المطیع رسول اللہ. السلام علیکم یا قمر بنی ہاشم. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علیکم یا آقائے غریبان مولائے بے کسان بادشاہ خراسان ضامنان یتیمان. السلطان یا ابا الحسن یا علی ابن موسیٰ الرضا روحی و جسم لک الفدا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علیکم یا مولانا یا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام علیکم یا شریک القرآن. السلام علیکم یا امام الانس والجان. اجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسہر اللہ مخرجک. یا سیدی ابن زہرا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. اللہم کل ولیک الحجۃ ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنوا وأرزك طوعا وتمتعوا فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم
مومن و مومنات یہ بھی اعلان سماعت فرما لیں. شب بیداری کی ڈیٹ آ گئی ہے جو کہ اگست 9 سنڈے کا دن ہے. وہاں اس دن منعقد کی جائے گی اور اس میں پاکستان سے نوحہ خان تشریف لا رہے ہیں. سید محمد شاہ جو آپ کی خدمت میں نواخوانی کریں گے مولا حسین کی خدمت میں. تمام مومن اور مومنات سے شرکت کی درخواست ہے. اور کل جمعے کی نماز بھی مومن اور مومنات یہاں پر ادا کی جائے گی. مولانا صاحب کی پیش امامت میں ادا کی جائے گی.